All right. Hi, I'm Tyler, and for my interview project, I looked into renting an apartment, and I interviewed Armo. I've always known him by Sammy, Mr. Sammy. I interviewed him on his duplex districts because he actually owns two of them and rents them out as apartments, and he also owns Sammy's Spirits and Steakhouse just as an extra, like that's who that is. And I asked him, do you have a choice in your tenants? And come to think of it, that was actually a really dumb question because you can't, due to the law, as he put it, due to the law, you really cannot background check them. What they do essentially is they go and they look at their credit score. And if their credit score is good enough, like up to their standards, then they'll more than likely accept you. And it's all on appearance and credit score, really. And then I asked him how much would he charge for rent. And I thought it was kind of cheap for how fancy these duplexes are. But it's still way out of my price range. And it was $1,200 for 3-bedroom housing and $1,100 for 2-bedroom housing. And that sounds really like, if I was a retired old man, I wouldn't be too upset with that, I would think. And then I asked him next, how often do you charge for rent? And they actually have two options, which I thought was kind of cool. They have the monthly rent, and they have a year lease. And I knew monthly and bi-monthly, but I'd never heard of a year lease. And for the payment of those two, the first payment placed will act as the monthly or yearly date that they collect the rent. And to me, I thought there was just an unwritten rule, like the 5th or whatever date is the day to collect rent. I had no idea that it was that simple. I thought that was kind of interesting. And this one, I asked him what the late term policy was, and I said it, I just said it straight like that, and he looked through me and says 5 days past when rent is due. What's the next question? So apparently this isn't a question he wants to deal with, and that was fine with me. I moved on very fast, and I asked him, do you provide furniture and appliances for your apartments? And they actually do. They do They do provide furniture and appliances. And I thought that was interesting because it's such a high dollar apartment. You would think they have the money, that they have their own things. They don't need furniture and appliances, but they have it anyway. And they also mow lawns and clean the ice off of driveways. And I would think that'd be real nice for grandma living in there. Whatever. It's a nice way to take care. And then, so since they provide furniture and appliances, I asked, do you pay for the utilities? And they partially do. They pay for the water bills and pay for the electricity and gas bills. And I thought that was kind of interesting just because it's yes and no. I've never heard it that way before. And then I asked him, what does it take to start up duplexes? Because I was kind of interested, because what if I don't know, mow lawns for 2 summers and buy a house and rent it out? And it's just a topic of conversation. And I asked him, what does it take to start up duplexes, and how did you get to where you are now? And he says, well, first we must build them. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? And we have to get them into working order, and then they begin to market them online. They take pictures of the whole house, the exterior, the interior, and then upload them to the internet. And their first unit they were kind of nervous about. They had 23 houses, and they found 23 applicants very quickly. And they were really excited about it, so they just kept building. And I thought that was really impressive, because now they have 67 applicants in their duplexes. And that's a lot. And I imagine that kind of rakes in very well. And then I asked, is there anything else you know about renting apartments, that I may have missed out on, or any tips and tricks you might know about finding the right apartment? And he told me upkeep is essential. Well, he told me a lot of things, but I can only write that fast. But he preached upkeep is essential. And that really makes sense, because if you have, even just in any business sense, if you have a product that you want to sell and make a lot of money on, that you make a lot of, keep it consistent, keep it clean, keep it done correctly, and you will have success if it is that needed of a product. And housing in Garden City, Kansas is very needed. And after that, I didn't quite know what I could pull a graph out of that, because it was a very, very quick interview because he's a very busy man, and I respect so much that he took the time to do that. But I did some more research on my own, and just out of curiosity, I was wondering like the average price of apartments here, and I found a website, and there was really only 4 available, like at all, and I went to it was called apartments.com, and our great town of Garden City was found on it, and I found 4 there, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all the ones that were there, but they were full, and they were all 1, 2, 3, 4 priced too. The other ones were more expensive, except for like the cracked out ones, but we won't talk about those. And I took the price of all 4 of each one, then they made up to 4. I added them together and found the average. And then I did the same thing for Kansas City, because I was just thinking of towns that, well, maybe Kansas City it's close, it's in the state, maybe the price is around the same. And it was. Actually, Garden City apartments cost more than it does in Kansas City for, well, like the cheap 4. Not the cracked out ones in Kansas City, but the cheap 4. And they're really close, and I thought that was really impressive, because Garden City it's a hub for jobs, but the housing market is terrible. And this kind of furthers my claim. And then I looked into Dallas, because Dallas is another town you think of. It's just a social hub. It's very, very popular, and it's just there's a little bit of everything in Dallas. And I looked into it, and like I said, I found the first 4 cheap ones, and it was a little more. And honestly, I agree with that. That makes sense. Because Garden City, and you would think Kansas City would give Dallas a run for its money, but Dallas took the cake. And that makes sense, the price that I found, than the average that I found. And then every time I typed in apartments, I would type in apartments 4, and then Chicago would pop up every time, and I needed one more, so I thought, why not? Let's go to the Windy City. And I found the first 4, the cheapest ones, and good lord, it is expensive to live in Chicago. And I took the first 4, and I found the average, just like I did on the other 3, and it still blew everything out of the water. And I was very impressed. Well, not impressed. I can barely afford to put gas in my pickup. But it was cool to see such a difference, and it wouldn't be such a boring graph. But that kind of concludes it, and I needed a graph to plug in, so I made one based on my own information that I found, and I'm really glad we had a project, because it was different, and it was so nice to just not do a boring project for once that actually required something of me outside of school. Granted, it was so hard to get an appointment with Sammy. It was so hard, but I'm glad I did. It was a lot of fun for me just to be social and get to make all these new connections and learn more and more. But I hope I touched on everything. I don't have some cute little song in the background, but I hope that covers everything. So yeah, thanks again.